Hello and welcome back to the Hand Toolery. I'm Andrew Malacy and today I'm taking you to school. I'm going to test you to see if you can identify the types of shavings I got here. So here we have, I'm going to show you each one of them and I'm going to show you the different types of shavings. So we have 7 different types of shavings that I pulled straight out of my scrap bin, my scrap pile there. And this is basically the order that you might go through if you're trying to get a board ready for example, my sideboard. You'd maybe start with a rough pass with your scrub plane, traversing the board. Then you traverse the board maybe with a regular plane to sort of get rid of the what I believe are called docks or the undulations in the board. And so I tend to use my 5 or even my number 6 for that. Then a lot of times I do a heavy set pass with the grain to start smoothing out things end to end. Then I'll actually do a smoothing pass and then that'll get lighter and lighter and lighter, and eventually I'll use my smoothing plane. And then I will joint an edge. Sometimes I'll joint the edge first just to get it flat, and then I can reference off that to get my length of the board. But I'll often do a heavy pass to sort of get rid of any defects, and then I'll do the medium to light passes to bring it into perfect flat. And then for this one, I'll need a lot of grooves. So I'm going to run a groove with my Stanley 45. And then finally, I have to fit a panel in that groove. I'm going to skew the plane as I pass, traversing along the panel on the edge, and it'll bevel the panel, or not quite raise the panel, but it'll have that same sort of effect. So there's my 7 processes. So I'll have it here to the one side. I'll have a list of it for you to be able to tell. So you're going to have to guess which one it is. We're going to start with the left here. I've got a couple small shavings. This is a very heavy shaving, and so it wasn't, the shavings weren't staying intact. They curled up, I don't know, not quite, maybe a ½ millimeter or more thick. It's a 1/4 inch wide, and they curl up like that. Sort of breaks the fibers. You see that? Then this one, it's all broken because I've been trying to untangle it. That's a longer version. So which one do you think that is? So that's the first one. Here's the second one. Remember, these aren't in the order of the process. These are just in a randomized order. Yeah, it's really thin, almost transparent in places. It's still a fairly good thick shaving, but it's I will say this wouldn't be my final one, but this is definitely one that'll get me close to my final one. All right, what do you think of this one? Look at how the grain, look at how the shaving is. It's rolling up. See how it wants to roll up like a scroll like that, but not perfectly rolled like the other ones, sort of rolling up on themselves. And you can see I have 2 flat edges on either side of it. And that's where, should I tell you what I did? Yeah, I marked in 1 inch. And then I cut the grain with my marking gauge. So it just sheared off nicely. How about this one? These are 2 different thicknesses of the same process. There's a really lighter pass as I got things uniform. And they just, each little one rolled up across it on itself. And then there's the thicker version before with another different plane. It's a larger plane. It tends to have a lot more mass behind it. So I like to use it for this process. It's a wider one. You can see that, how wide the actual shaving is, maybe like that wide, compared to not quite as wide here, maybe like that. But same process, slightly thicker shavings, thinner shaving, thicker shaving. Similar process, not quite the same though. And look how it's very thin on the edges. And like, if you could feel this, you could tell that it's very thick in the middle. The edges, as you can see, are like frayed, barely there. So what kind of plane, what kind of pass would be very thick in the middle and then very thin on the edges? And I have a bunch of those. They tend not to be very long shavings. And you take very thick ones usually. But you can hear them, they crunch, and actually they're hard to break in the middle, but on the ends, you know, they're not. They fold over easily. This is 2 shavings of the same process again. This is a medium pass. Let me see if I can show you. There you go. This is a medium pass. This is a little usually after I've done some work. This is one of my beginning passes as I'm cleaning things up, and I'm concentrating more on just getting everything in line and looking good and working things out to bring it into to flat. Look how thick that is, and it's doing the same thing as we saw before, where it's sort of breaking the grain as well. See that? So again, these are two of the same process right here. And then this is my final one here. It looks very much like this one, right? But it's much thicker. Can you hear the crunch? Right there. It's a much thicker pass, right? And since it's longer, it's clearly with the grain. So what do you think? All right, if you don't want to know the answer, if you're still guessing, pause it right now. Okay, we're back. So right here, this one is your 45. I tend to, with 45s, I tend to just run a heavy groove once I get things going. I'll do it a little bit later on the first couple passes to make sure I don't tear out. And still, honestly, I haven't figured it out perfectly, but I do lighter passes at the beginning, and then I just really go at it with thicker passes to get the groove down to depth. This is a smoothing pass. It's not with my smoothing plane though. This is actually with my number 5 set really light. My smoothing plane I'm really not going to use at this point because this is all from beveling a panel, and so I had to bring the panel into flat and then true and joint the edges and all that stuff. So this smoothing pass here is not the final pass. I'm going to wait, and it'll probably be a little bit thinner than that when I use my smoothing plane. But yes, this is a pass just to bring everything into nice and smooth, so it's feeling good, but it's not perfect. But as you can tell, the thin nature of it, the fact that it's it's see-through, you can tell it's a smoothing pass. This one here, this is my skewed traversing pass, and like I told you, what I did is this is straight off the edge of the panel, so that then you know you'd be skewing it to make a bevel. And what I did is I marked in it with a gauge 1 inch, and that severs the grain. And then, of course, I go diagonal across it, which causes it to roll up, kind of like that. You see how it wants to roll up diagonal? So the skew pass allows it to roll up like that. When you take thicker pass across the grain in the middle of the board, you get these ones. So this is a traversing pass with a flat, non-cambered iron. This is my number 6, so it's a little bit wider than my number 5, if you can tell. And the number 5, the mouth is closed up real tight, so I just use that to take off the high spots in the plane tracks from my number 6. You can see that they don't tend to want to stick together because it's really ripping the grain quite a bit. This here is my quote-unquote scrub plane. It's just a number 4C that I've converted the iron for. And just if you look at that, you can see where the camber of the iron is. It scoops it out, and there's almost like a reflection there. You see that? So because the blade itself is a U, it's going to cut mostly here and then somewhat here and then nothing up here. So the U shape of it, or the camber on the iron, scoops it out, and it doesn't get a full width shaving. It concentrates the thickness in the middle, and that's what allows you to take a deeper cut, because you're really only taking a deep cut like there, and then it's just tapered off there, and then nothing out there on the width of the iron. This is a joint. This is for joining an edge. This is when I'm bringing it into true, like I said. So I've got the plane set really thick, and so it's doing the same thing as my 45, which is breaking, and it's kind of sort of mashing up the grain as it goes along. Whereas this medium pass, you can see that it does that much less, if at all. It still has some of it, but this is a much less. This is a thinner pass. And then, of course, if that's okay, then I'll leave it. But if not, then I'll slowly bring the board into true with thinner and thinner passes, concentrating where it's out a square. And then finally, this is a medium pass along the grade. And then, so after I've gone with my scrub plane, traversed it with these shavings here, then I'm going to go along the grain to get everything coming into smooth, and then finally it'll be this one here, the smoothing pass. then again, I'll have to joint the edge first before I can run the groove. And so sometimes I'll joint the edge first, then I'll do all the panel flattening, and then I'll run the groove. And then of course unless you're gonna not flatten the back, or not flatten the panel, this is gonna be one of your last steps here, if you're gonna skew the panel. Now this groove didn't go for the panel, it went for the support that the panel sits in. So anyways, there you go. Did you get 100%? Did you pass our test today? You know I'm a teacher, so I gotta find out if you're learning anything. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this and maybe you learned a couple things along the way. And why don't you, if you have some really odd shavings or if you've been doing some hand planing lately, why don't you see if we can pass the test of name that shaving. So thanks, and see you around here for the next one.